Hi. We're going to stay in the land of maps for a little bit, but take a different perspective. So my name is Sarah, and I love cities. I'm fascinated by them. I want to know everything I can about cities. And a big part of that is understanding how people interact with and experience public space. And if we really want to know how people experience public space, we need good data. Currently, these are some of the tools we use to collect and create data sets. For example, a government agent might go out and collect information about a new construction site. Or a different government agent might use a poll to understand citizen priorities. These tools produce this kind of data. We can glean fascinating insights from it, but ultimately it's still two-dimensional. It describes a basic description of our interaction with the city. The reality of public space looks more like this. It's a hodgepodge. It's our actions and our thoughts and emotions. So how do we capture that data, that experiential data, and make it just as useful as a map or a spreadsheet? To answer that question, I designed Civic View. Civic View is a research tool, and it uses personalized data to measure public space. So who's this for? It's for people who want to answer big questions about their cities and communities, policymakers, or government agencies like the New York City Housing Authority, or community organizations like community boards, civic organizations, or even private developers. Civic View has 3 parts. The first is a research method, and this is how we collect data. The data is then processed, and then there's a way to visualize it. So I've said data a lot, and in this particular context, I'm going to talk about video, narrative, biometric, and location. But don't worry, I'll get through all that. So to start, the foundation is an interview technique called the walkabout, in which a researcher and a participant walk around and explore a familiar community. As they're doing so, the participant has a camera. They're holding that camera, and they're paying attention to what they care about, and they're filming. This is unlike other video data collection techniques because the camera's not trained on the participant, but rather they have the authority and the agency to show what's important to them. Throughout the interview, there's a discussion. And so there's a transcript of that discussion, and that transcript becomes readable text. Next, we have biometric data. And so biometric data is an objective reading of our emotional state of being. In particular, for this particular prototype, I used electrodermal activity as the measurement. And now that's the involuntary production of moisture on the skin. And that's the measurement that's taking place. And it's reflective of our fight or flight status. So what it does is it reveals a hidden emotional state, something that we cannot consciously articulate, and certainly not talk about during an interview. Tying this all together then, it's on a map, and it's using GPS and time as the thing to tie it all together. And in this way, it becomes just as useful as our current data sets. So to recap, we've got video, narrative, biometric, and location. And these 4 things become one single data stream. The result is a comprehensive view of public space through the eyes of a real person. Video, biometric, that's that heartbeat right there, the GPS line, and then the transcript, and this is what the participant has been talking about as they're walking around. So to test this system, I met up with a woman named Anna, and she lives in downtown Manhattan, and I imagined that I was part of a nonprofit, and I wanted to learn more about her community. So this is a functional prototype. It's on civicview.org. You can go check it out. So what we're going to do is explore the data. And if you want to do this, you can actually load your own data in here. But for right now, we're going to process the data, scroll down. And so you can start to see that there's video, which is on the top. In the bottom left-hand corner, we have the biometric data. And that's tied to that GPS line. And on the right is the transcript. So I'm going to fast forward to a point where Anna's emotional data is elevated. She's anxious or engaged in some way. And she starts talking about a handball court. She also says that she usually avoids the area. So as we turn this corner in the video, we're going to see that there's a big green open recreational space. And this is something that we normally want in a residential community. We want those recreational spaces. But in this particular instance, this participant, this person, this resident, has a high elevated state of emotion, and she avoids the area. So we're learning a little bit more. Later, in this same interview, she's now got, see the heart is purple, it's beating a little bit more slowly, normal state. But in the transcript, we see that something has prompted her to start talking about that handball court. And she mentions that she thinks that a gunshot happened there, and that's one of the reasons she avoids the area. So now, the transcript, the narrative, and the biometric data are working together to support one another, and we have a stronger view of what's going on. In another instance, we see that her heartbeat is elevated, it's beating faster, she's more anxious, but there's nothing in the transcript that mentions why she's anxious about this particular area. So let's dive a little bit deeper. We have this visual context, so now we can start asking questions. Is it the fences? Is it the fact that it's desolate? The next step is to engage with other residents of the community and use the Civic View system and ask specific questions about this area, because now we know that we have that prompting. So the point is, by triangulating this information, by finding out where, by triangulating information, by finding out where the data does and does not match up, we can ask more informed questions, and we can gain a deeper perspective on our neighborhoods. And over time, we can find those patterns and trends. So Civic View helps us make sense of the broad spectrum of sights and thoughts and emotions that make up our public space. And in doing so, it can help us provide insight for our civic organizations, for our policymakers, and for our government agencies. It's literally human-centered data. Thanks.